Welcome back, people of the world. We've got Joe Dillon in the house. What's going on, my brother?
How are you doing, man?
Doing very well. It's the Matt Tack Reap the Harvest live podcast. Matty Matt's in Michigan with the family. How you doing, buddy?
I am, man. That's why we're a little makeshift area right here. But
it doesn't matter. We make it work. We make it work. We're going to be talking about elevating your game. We've got Joe Dillon in the house who's going to be breaking down a lot of things he's done to elevate his game. And, of course, we plant seeds on this show and we reap the harvest in the future. Here's the intro, and we'll be right back. Absolutely beautiful. You guys take it away.
Sounds good. Sounds good. Well, hey, guys, we have Joe Dillon on the podcast today. I'm just going to kind of give a brief Joe. So Joe is actually, I believe, Ivy League graduate, correct? Cornell?
Yep.
Cornell graduate.
Don't hype that up, man. Formal school, don't hype that up, dude.
Don't hype that up. All right. So I did a little due diligence research, but dude, you actually came from DC. I lived in DC for about 5 years, did some government contracting, and actually made my way to Tampa. Joe's actually in Tampa now, but I gotta tell the story on how I met Joe. So it was so random. I kind of had been following him on Instagram, and so I knew he was an influencer. He's big in the space of the wholesaling space and just a real estate investor. And not only that, he's just got a mindset on him. So now he's the CEO of Elevate Coaching Group. And so anyways, I was following him, and we every day once we get done with dinner, myself and my family, we walk around our block. We just make a round. It's our kind of our family MO every day. And so I'm walking around and I see these two guys rolling with this dog, and I'm like, oh, hey, what's up? I'm real friendly. I'm like, hey, how you doing? And then I look at this guy and I'm like, man, he looks really, really, really familiar. And so we start chatting for a minute, and I'm like, wait a minute, is your name Joe Dillon? And he's like, yeah. And he was kind of like taken aback. So Joe, COVID brought him into my neighborhood. Joe was staying at an Airbnb. Didn't want to stay at his condo. I think you're in downtown, right? You're in downtown.
I was. I since got moved out to St. Pete.
You're in St. Pete?
I got rid of my apartment. So
beautiful.
Yeah.
Well, anyways, it was super random. So I connected with him. I'm like, Joe, man, gotta have you on the podcast. He said, absolutely, man. We'll get a day in order. So we have you here now, and thank you so much for coming out, brother.
Absolutely, man. It's a pleasure to be here.
So, Joe, you are the CEO of Elevate Coaching Group. Can you just kind of give us a snapshot of that? I know you've been on podcasts before. I know it's probably getting old, but just give all the viewers an idea of Elevate Coaching Group and where you're taking people to the next level.
Yeah, sure, man. Well, let me give you a little bit of a backstory, but basically, I've been an entrepreneur ever since I was young. I started flipping shirts. I flipped T-shirts when I was in high school, and I threw parties. I used to throw big parties, and I would charge people to get in because back in the day, still there's nowhere for people that are underage to go, right? So I would rent out this place, and I had a bunch of people come in, and I charged even up to $20 a head. And some nights I would make $6,000-$7,000 in a night, as a 17-year-old kid, and it was pretty dope. So I paid my way through Cornell, through college. But yeah, I've always had that entrepreneurial mindset, right? But since I went to Cornell, and my family was kind of they weren't as entrepreneurial as one might want. And so the traditional route obviously was for me to get a job. And I tried that for about a year and a half. Didn't work out, and so I started flipping cars on the side. Through the flipping cars, I met a partner, and we started wholesaling houses. And then we pretty much blew that up. We were a really good business match as far as our personalities and our skill sets. And so, that combined with just relentless hustle, we blew that business up to 7 figures our second year. So we were able to hit that $1 million mark. We made 1.2 million in 2015. And so we only continued to scale from there. We made a ton of mistakes though, right? We were like, young 20, like young 20s kids. Like I was 23 or 24, I believe. And we didn't know what the hell we were doing, right? But we had a lot of hustle. We studied, a lot of sales. We had both done sales our whole lives. And, we blew this business up. And then we went to multiple markets, we moved down here to Tampa because the market was great here, and also the cost of living, the weather, all this good stuff around here. And I still live here in Tampa. And so, through that process, though, it was such a journey, right? It was such a journey. We almost went bankrupt 3 times. We hired so many wrong people. There were so many culture mismatches. There was training shortcomings. There was leadership and management shortcomings. There's a lot that we had to learn through the process. And we ended up, molding everything. And there's always a consistent molding process to get better people, to get better systems, to refine our processes more, to become better people ourselves. And, just through the process, it changed me so much. And so, because of that, and it also taught me so much about business, about management, about leadership, about scaling, about optimization, right? That I wanted to help a lot of other people to overcome that barrier. Like I think most wholesalers, they're hustlers, but most of them have no idea how to build a business. And a true real business, a business with systems, a business with processes, a business with kind of accountabilities, with meetings, with a corporate-like structure that can operate like a well-oiled machine. And so that's my passion, and that's one of my greatest skill sets is being able to assess a business and find out exactly what it needs, and get it to run like a well-oiled machine. And so I've done that for hundreds of people across the nation in different markets. Help people scale from 2-3 deals a month to 15 deals a month, and simply by showing them the way to actually structure a real business. So and not only that, obviously they have more time, they have more freedom, they have more leverage, and they're becoming better people overall. And that's
Joe doesn't get an island. All right, there we go.
Yeah.
I was letting the man give the people what they need real quick.
I know. I felt
Jump
he's on an island, though. Hey, Joe, keep going, though. Awesome stuff. Keep going. I apologize.
Oh, it's all good, man. So, man, I truly have a passion now for helping people scale their businesses, but even more importantly, to help elevate their mindsets, to help, really what I'm truly passionate about now is helping people achieve paradigm shifts, because I believe that most entrepreneurs they're not operating from a place of wholeness. They're not operating from a place of inspiration, of love. They're operating from a place of lack, of scarcity. I think most entrepreneurs have this issue, and it's, you can blame social media, you can blame, your parents, you can blame, the Grant Cardone if you want. The fact of the matter is that it is an issue right now, right? And I have seen it, because I've coached intimately, hundreds of people. I see this on a regular daily basis. And so my passion is really helping them achieve paradigm shifts to where now their business means something to them, right? I help them create a real vision, a real passion, a real purpose to where they can actually step into the office every day and not only not feel rushed, not only have it feel effortless, but also, ironically, achieve more with less. And I think most entrepreneurs are in this rushed mentality. Everybody wants to make $1 million. Everybody wants to make 10 million.
That's totally true.
And and they're not even paying any attention to the inner game. Like, wait, why do I want to make $10 million? Oh, and then they dig deep enough and then they realize, oh, it's because, when I was young, my mom or my dad didn't show me love, and so, because of that, I always wanted to prove myself, or I was bullied as a kid and no one thought I would amount to anything. So I had to prove everybody wrong. Or there are little ticks and things like this that most people don't realize are driving their life. And that's why I'm really big into the subconscious, And so I've been doing a lot of Dr. Joe Dispenza work, really like uncovering the subconscious programs that are reoccurring and that run your life. And most people don't even have a clue about these programs that are running them on a regular daily basis. And so, anyhow, I don't mean to blabber, but I
love it, dude. And I've played Grant Cardone's 10X2 event, and while I found some of the speakers to be motivational, there was a lot of selling that happened, and there was a lot of, almost if you don't make millions of dollars, then you're a failure.
Right.
And I performed on that stage, and I remember walking up there it was the third day, and it was like after a lot of that, the event was almost over. Yeah. And I'm like, man, I think it's awesome that I'm able to play here and show everyone that literally I was homeless, living in my van with my guitar 2 years ago, and here I am playing at the biggest business event on the planet, and I've never made $1 million. Wow. So it depends on what you want to achieve in life. And I agree with that. I had already dig down deep inside and said, I want to be the guy that shows people that you can get on these stages with the big $1 million salesmen. There's nothing wrong with those people. I don't think there's anything wrong with that. But I think that sometimes it makes it seem unachievable for the person in the crowd. Unless you've made millions of dollars, you don't belong on the stage. I don't agree with that, and I don't subscribe to that. And I think that's why that worked for me, because I was willing to say that's not my priority. My priority is showing up and making this happen to prove that there's a lot more to success than just making millions of dollars. Sometimes it's just making it onto that stage. And so many people resonated with that.
Dude, totally. I mean, too many people are making money and success synonymous. And
right.
It's a never-ending, insatiable cycle. The problem with desire is that as soon as the desire is fulfilled, there's another desire. It's an endless void, right? And so what I try to help, and teach all of my clients and people and anybody really that I come across, especially if they're an entrepreneur, is I try to teach them the inner game. And what I mean by that is understanding that, you're already everything that you need to be, right? Once you can find wholeness, completeness, once you can feel like you don't lack, then all of a sudden, everything that you do can come from a place of inspiration, not desperation, right? From a place of wholeness and abundance, as opposed to a place of scarcity and lack. Yeah. And the work that you will produce is totally freaking different, right? Yeah. And I think most people, and you can even say that as like survival versus abundance, right? Like, because most people are operating out of survival states of being, right? And in fact, it can drive some of the most successful people that you see on social media. It can drive those people to achieve massive external success. And, the more that they get, the more that they want to have. And it's a never-ending, insatiable cycle, like I said. Now, it's not to say that money is bad. Money is not bad.
No, and I think people make this mistake of if you're in it for being successful in this area, and this area, and this area, and you're not 100% talking about the money end of it, that they think, oh, well, it seems to me like you act like just money doesn't matter or something like that. It's like, well, right. I never said that.
Yeah.
Well, I still think that what I do is worth money, but I get fulfilled by helping Matt produce a show. Matt doesn't need to learn how to do all this stuff because I learned it for years and years and years. So instead of, and this is something that maybe you've coached people and it took them a while to learn, instead of making the show all about me playing guitar, I used my skills in marketing that helped me get on stages to help other entrepreneurs get their message out. And that's when I started to see a lot more success as a business person rather than just a musician. So maybe that's kind of a break off of what I learned as well. When I started to think, how can I serve others? You know what I mean? I started to get more rewards.
I think that's a trigger. That's a trigger right there. How you can serve others. I think that's like a big piece, because when you say like scarcity versus abundance, I think there's when you're always operating in a scarcity mindset, you don't typically have others in mind. I'm not there to serve others, right?
Right.
When I have that scarcity mode, I see this all the time, right? I see this. We just had there was a couple deals actually this past week that we closed out on that I just felt like a situation where I was like, hey man, I'm going to take a little bit less in this deal because I've gotten to the point where I'm not like, it's not the scarcity mindset, right? I'm willing to give somebody else. Now, granted, I am in probably a little bit different financial position than, a number of other people. So I'll take that into mind that some people are out there just to straight hustle. And they're like, they're scraping against the wall to do their thing. But it's so true. And that's what I love about Joe, about the message you're actually portraying and pushing out, is that when you do have that abundance mindset, others come to mind really before self. Although you do have to work on self. That's a big Jim Rohn thing, right? Work on yourself twice as much as you work on anything else. But typically that comes with the abundance, right? I'm gonna try to get my mentality, my mental state is going to be to serve before being served. And I think part of that, and I bring up something from Sarah Blakely. I'm a big Sarah Blakely follower. She had a method from growing up from her dad was redefine your definition of failure. She wanted to fail every day. And when you can be vulnerable to failure, be vulnerable to like your weaknesses, then you can see your biggest strengths. You see your biggest strides. And so, I mean, for me, I love that mentality as far as, when you're like, you're constantly back, you're going to make probably poor decisions or decisions. I just think of in terms, I try to always act with transparency across the board. So and I'll give case in point, Joe is definitely way ahead of me in wholesaling. I actually started out in the commercial space, have gone into more kind of a transactional based approach over the past probably 4 or 5 months, because we have kind of that short-term game where we see the whole thing go through COVID. But the one thing that I love doing with people is building, I think, okay, how can I make this relationship 10, 15, 20 years where there's really isn't even a shelf life when I get into it, rather than, hey, let me make as much money as possible from this one deal, but burn 3 other people in the process, or not be completely transparent where I feel nasty walking away from the deal. You know what I mean? So I actually try to create a lot like, hey, I'm going to be transparent along the process. I want to create this as like a long-term value. And I'll tell you, case in point, I've done 5. I'm going up on 5 deals with a guy that I met last month by building a long-term relationship. That's going to be like $30,000-$40,000 in value in a period of 2 months. So, I mean, those are the things like in my mindset as far as, hey, when you aren't operating in the scarcity, but in the abundance and building those relationships, it's that abundance mindset cultivates, and like rising tide lifts all boats, right? And when you can lift others up with you, man, it creates definitely a better world. But you have to be vulnerable to the fact that you have these things, right, that kind of come into way. But Joe, tell us a little bit about, so I struggle with this too, because I struggle with level of anxiety of like separation from work, right? I do like working, and I like working really, really hard, but I also know my why and my purpose. And that's number 1, God. And then number 2 is my wife. And then 3 is my 3 little girls that I have. And I know that if I can't dedicate the time and see that when they get to 15, 16, 20 years old, and if I can't cultivate and shape their mind now, it's too late by then. So I know that time is so important to me, but it gives me anxiety when I'm not working, or I'm missing, and I'm maybe not going to do this deal because it takes up too much time. And I'm like, oh, the value in that deal, right? So tell us a little bit how you work through a level of anxiety, because I know that's something that definitely I'm vulnerable to. Like I have to work through these things sometimes, but tell us a little bit about that, because I know that you definitely shared that with your followers.
Yeah, for sure. And I'll provide a little bit of context here. So, about 3 months ago, pretty much when COVID hit, I got struck with anxiety, and I had no idea what it actually was. Like, I didn't even know what anxiety was until I used the term, loosely, just like everybody else does. But I didn't really know clinically what it was. And so, from so much working, in my 20s, and then stresses, when it came to the business, stresses when it came to personal relationships, stress, like when your body emits stress hormones over and over and over, it can really get out of balance. And so that's what happened to me. And so I, actually had, I guess you can label it chronic anxiety if you want, for about a period of a few months, and it still lingers. It's, thankfully I have seen a tremendous amount of improvement from it, but it taught me so much about myself.
So how would you say that affected you on a daily basis from people that may be dealing with that? Like, how did that hit you? Like, you wake up in the morning and panic, or what? How does that work? Because I'm anxious sometimes. I feel like sometimes I overthink stuff. I start to get anxious. I start to get flustered. You know what I mean? How did it work for you?
Right. So yeah, that's why I wanted to differentiate. Like, when most people say anxious, they're not really experiencing anxiety. They're kind of just they're expressing like an emotion. I meant like physiological symptoms for me, from a lot of stress that had happened. And then this was kind of the tipping point that knocked me over, was the COVID, right? And so when I would wake up and some of the symptoms, like I would feel dizzy. Sometimes I feel very uneasy. It's a difficult feeling to describe, but it's a very uncomfortable feeling, right? And things like fast heart beating and flushing and tingling, hot tingling sensations, and just a feeling of uneasiness as well. And then it can range from mild to severe. Thankfully, I never really had severe. I just had very persistent, moderate symptoms.
Right.
So it totally affected me. And I did not want to go. Like, I know some very materially successful entrepreneurs at a high level that, because of all the things that they have to deal with, like, they experienced it as well. And it's, as I started to talk around, I'm like, I'm surprised at how common it is from high performers, like high performing entrepreneurs. And I did not want to do the pharmaceutical route. Like, I didn't want to get on pills. Like, fuck that. I am 1,000,000% against big pharma. Like 1,000,000%. You know what I mean? And so, not only that, but I just didn't want to affect my own body, right?
You didn't want the chemical or the physiological side effects.
100%, So, so I wanted to face it head on, right? And it was really challenging, very uncomfortable. There's a lot of fears that I realized that I was living amongst that previously were very well masked, right? Because I was materially successful. And it wasn't until COVID hit, which I think it was a divine gift, that helped me realize all of these things, right? And so, it helped me come to terms face to face with, like, okay, what kind of fears I'm dealing with. Do I have a fear of getting COVID? Do I have a fear of dying? Do I have a fear of, of my business going down? Do I have a fear of being broke? Right? All these fears that were uncovered that I had to wrestle with daily. And it was a really challenging season. It was a very challenging season. And, I'm just now coming out of that, but it provided so much awareness. And so what I want to say to your question, you don't have to let it get to that point, right? Like to an actual physiological, if you want to call it condition or physiological effects, long-term duration. You don't have to let it get to that point. But the biggest thing to both of your questions is, like, that I'll say is, whenever you're feeling anxious, you really just got to question where your actions are driving from. So Matt, to your question, you're saying, okay, sometimes I feel guilt, you didn't say this, but basically this is what you're saying. You feel guilty that you're not working, or, you might go away and you're like, oh man, I feel a little bit anxious. I feel like I should be doing things. Right.
Yeah.
And that is, I totally resonate with that because I used to feel like that too.
Yeah. I feel that sometimes too.
And what that is, it's, you really have to question, okay, well, where is this coming from? First of all, right? In order to find any type of a long-term solution, right? Which is always, I always say, like, solutions will always entail like a paradigm shift. Like you will have to become a new person, right? That's why I'm a big Dr. Joe Dispenza fan, because his work is literally changing lives.
Yeah,
like,
he's good.
All across the world. And he's like healing people from cancer. People are healing themselves. I should say that better. And people healing themselves from all types of physical ailments just through the power of their consciousness.
Yeah.
And that's something that I've really come to terms with recently too. So, but going back to the paradigm is you have to really question yourself and understand, wait, where is this coming from? Why can't I feel relaxed when I'm taking a little time off? Yeah. And the answer is always going to come from a certain paradigm that you're living within. And the paradigm is like, look, I'm getting a lot of my value and a lot of my validation from being a high performer, right? Mm-hmm. And again, that is coming from a place, just being straight the fuck up. That's coming from a place of scarcity. That's coming from a place of, look, I need to do in order to feel good. I need to do this. I need to have this. I need to achieve this in order to feel like I am.
To get the validation that I achieved something, right?
Exactly.
Either monetarily or, mentally or whatever. Even with like we said, with the performance thing. Hey, if I can just do this one big performance, then I'll get in the door and I'll be validated. You know what I mean? There was a little bit of that with that situation.
You know what I found that my pivot was, and I appreciate that. I appreciate
that's good.
Transparency too. That's really good. What I found that my pivot was, and this happened because I do have a pivot now, right? To that, even though like I do continually want to like grow and work, and I do want to do these other things. I just want to experience life, and I do want to maintain goals. I'm a goal believer too. But at the same time, what I found is that there's such a gift in, number one, extreme gratitude, not just even gratitude, but extreme gratitude, and then presence. And I felt I still grab on my phone too much, but part of the reason why I even met you, Joe, was because I said at 5:30 to 7:30, it's my kids, we're eating dinner and then we're taking a walk. And I never knew that walks were just like, that would get me to this level of gratitude. But what I'm able to do sometimes is push the stroller, let my kids walk in front of me, let my wife, and just be like, my God, I am so grateful, And and that is, man, just to experience that level of gratefulness has been that kind of that paradigm shift, right? Of like, oh yeah, if everything went to hell in a handbasket, I still can be grateful. And so I love that. I love that mindset.
100%, dude. Let me tell you something. I was just meditating today. And, for anybody listening, if there's one thing I can recommend that you start doing, if you're not doing it already, is meditation. But, I fully believe that it opens up like a channel to where you can receive, like Napoleon Hill called it the ether, right? Joe Dispenza calls it the quantum field. Right. Whatever term you want to coin it. But there, you can open up a channel to where you can start to receive, right? You can start to receive downloads, right? From source, from the divine, from God, whatever it is that you want to call it, term it, name it. Yeah. And I was in my meditation today and I realized, like, one of the things that I struggle with too is sometimes I can put a lot on my plate, and sometimes I can also I can get overwhelmed. And so because I know that about myself, I love simplicity. And I actually feel like that is the way, right? I feel like most people are overwhelmed with everything that's coming at them in this day and age.
Yeah, it's easy too, especially with so much information pounding us all the time.
Very easy. So I got this message, and it's it's going to sound, maybe to the unenlightened person, it's going to sound cheesy, but like, life is so simple. Like, life is so simple. And I got this message that love is the answer to everything. And like, I have heard that before, and I always thought it was kind of like, feel good saying, kind of like a hippie kind of saying. But I actually, and this all came from, like, it was like downloaded into me, like, even from a logical perspective, love is the answer. And the reason I say that is because there's an amazing book called Power versus Force. Have you guys ever read that?
Oh,
no, but I read a book recently called The Power of Now that's kind of along the lines of what you've been talking about.
Yeah, Eckhart Tolle. Yeah, so I highly recommend that book. He really, like, this guy basically breaks down consciousness on a scientific level, and he actually measured it. He did a ton of experiments on thousands of people. He found that basically there's a specific set of levels of consciousness, starting all the way from the bottom, which is shame, right? That's what it's termed, all the way to the top, to love, joy, and then enlightenment. And the people that are operating at, he says that he basically created a spectrum of levels with measurements, right? So it was like level 500 and above. It's, when people are operating at that level of love, there is no longer concern for self. Their entire life is dedicated to the salvation of humanity, right? And then obviously there's like all these levels in between, like, at the bottom, people are solely focused on survival, right? That's fear and anger. And when they're in those states, they're just thinking about survival, right? Inherently, like that is what's driving their motives. And then even some of that is lacking in the lower levels, like shame and guilt, and that's where you find suicide and things of that nature, right? Yeah. So, but I realized, like, when I was in meditation, like, how logical it is, even for the salvation and the progression of humanity. Mm-hmm. Like, if we could do so much more with the resources that we have available today. We could do so much more for the good of humanity, right? And when I say the good of humanity, I mean, even a basic foundation we haven't gotten yet, like world hunger. We still haven't solved that. Like, how have we not solved this yet?
Yeah, I saw some kind of statistic. I try to go off data with any of that, and it would only cost X amount. It wouldn't cost much. Let's just put it like that.
Honestly, if everybody were to just elevate their consciousness, like tomorrow, we would solve it tomorrow, literally.
Right.
But the problem is that most people are in survival states, and so they're thinking about themselves. They're thinking selfishly, right? And to your point, Matt, when you're in those states, you're not thinking about other people.
Nope.
Right? And whereas if everybody would, elevate their souls, elevate their consciousness to where they can actually understand and realize that is what's going to save humanity, we can all start working together that way. And like, we could accomplish amazing things, not only for our own peace of mind, for our own, for our own consciousness, for our own thoughts, for our own health, amazing things in technology. We could accomplish some incredible, absolutely extraordinary things. And so, and I realized that, like, and it was just so simple, right? It's so simple. And when you're operating on that level, it literally pulverizes any other negative thoughts that are below it, right? like, oh, what about this? Oh, okay, well, I gotta make more money because, right? Like right now, I have more money than I've ever had in my life, and let's just say earlier this year, I still had anxiety towards money. Like, what the fuck? You know what I'm saying? And then that's when I realized
it's almost like you're conditioning it. You're almost fueling it.
Yeah, and
I gotta have more. I gotta have more. I gotta have more. And that's kind of what you talked about with the success. What is it? Narrative, especially online. That if you're not making millions of dollars a year, then you're not successful. You're not a real business if you're running your game out of your house and it's just you. You know what I mean? That's a classic one too.
And again,
so there's this guy, there's an influencer in DC. He's actually my pastor when I was in DC, Mark Batterson. I don't know if you heard of Mark Batterson, but he actually started up. Dude, I love pastors that actually have an entrepreneurial mind. So he's a guy that started with the church, created a number of campuses, churches in DC. So we went to one in Columbia Heights, then we went to another one, DuPont Circle. Lincoln Theater was one of them. But this dude has like a model built out. But I follow him on IG, and something that he said the other day was that I took to heart is he said, define your definition of success. And that success, that narrative that you're going to build out shouldn't be what other people think, right? You need to define what your definition of success looks like to you. And then you establish that narrative along the way. And I think, what you're saying, like, what does it truly come down to? What's the root of it all? Because I mean, you can go after $10 million. That it's money can be the cause. Money can be the result. It just can't be the cause. That's what I always say, and what's that narrative? What does that look like to you? Because there are definitely happy people, that aren't going to make a lot of money. What like a case in point, my sister-in-law is starting up a nonprofit organization, right? The intentions are to make tens of millions of dollars starting up a nonprofit. What it is to do is to create influence within Ecuador, right? And to build and establish a level of tourism there that she's building basically a dream for other people. She's building that narrative along the way is not to make 10 million bucks. It's to create a whole new culture and dynamic within the city of Alosi, Ecuador. So I think, that's so cool. And I've partnered up with her, and we're definitely, we're spearheading some efforts that I'm hopping on on a consulting basis, but I'm also financially supporting that too, because I realize that the mission isn't based out of scarcity, right? The mission there is not based out of scarcity. It's only to help others and to love on others and to create new and unique experience. And then this time of COVID, she had to pivot, right? Her business model pivoted from, hey, are we even going to stay? Like, can it go on? Because tourism isn't even a thing right now, right? Like, how is this organization to, hey, what does this now look? Okay, it's humanitarian relief, right? Ecuador has been impacted very, very hard. Mm-hmm. So now how can we raise capital to deploy masks, food, whatever they need? So now it's a humanitarian just for the short time so they can get back onto their vision. But who can't hop on board that, right? That's love right there. So I love where you're going with that. Joe, so I got, I know I'm going to keep us on track here as far as overall time. I don't know I'm coming on, but so if you could, we talked about kind of how you were working some things. I love like the mindset shift and that paradigm and some of the things. We'll get some links to the book and various things you said, but best piece of advice for people struggling to take action, right? I know you're a big believer in action. You take action, but as far as getting people off the ground, especially an Elevate coaching group, you've taken people from 3 to 5 deals to 15. Typically, there's going to be a mental block there. What is it? How can you help them? But what is the best piece of advice for people struggling to take action today?
Yeah. So everybody, I think, struggles at some point and in some fashion with taking action, and it's always the same thing, right? It's always a similar thing. There's some type of limiting belief that is stopping you from actually taking action. And what I'll say is, like, man, I've had a lot of clients that that have had that similar issue. Okay, and one, just hearing a story, I think is inspirational. There is so like a lot of people get caught up in, okay, the reason that they don't take action is because, oh, what if this goes wrong? What if that goes wrong? Maybe I don't have it right. Maybe I'm a perfectionist. Maybe this isn't looking perfect yet, so I'm not going to take action on it yet. What I'll say is the biggest thing that my mentor told me was just like, take massive, imperfect action. Okay. And the thing is, like, even if it's not 100% correct, you don't want to completely fire and then aim, right? But just the act of you taking action is going to get you out of that mindset, right? It's kind of like it's hard. It's kind of like a catch-22 kind of thing, because once you start taking the action, all of a sudden, now you're elevated. You elevated yourself, and you get out of that mentality. So. And if it needs redirection, if it needs redirecting, it will always, you'll always know, right? And you'll always be able to redirect it. But don't be one of those people that, needs to get everything perfect before they release a product, before they release a service, before they actually start making calls,
because you're never going to do it at that point. You're just never going to do it.
And here's the thing. Let me tell you a story. So when I started my coaching business, I had a little bit of a mental block with what kind of a program am I going to release? How much am I going to charge? What's going to be in it? I have to record this training. I had to, create all these modules, and then I have to create this structure for coaching calls and things like that. And my coach said, dude, just pick a price and start selling it now. And I was like, hold on, wait, what do you mean? I have to create it first, right? And he was like, no. No, you don't. Pick a price and start selling it this week. And I was like, I haven't created the program yet. He's like, I don't care. Pick a price, start selling it now. So what I did was I created, actually to this day, it's like my most viewed video on Facebook. And so I created this video for marketing purposes to show people that I knew what the hell I was talking about. And within like a week, I had sold 10, I had filled up my coaching program, and I had sold 10 seats in my coaching program to a program that wasn't even created yet. It wasn't even, I didn't even create it. But here's the thing, I knew all of the knowledge, right?
Everything was in your idea.
Blocking me was like, oh, I gotta, how am I going to structure this program? How am I going to create it? How am I going to, order, the modules? And it was the biggest action ever, because I hadn't even created it. I had everything telling me not to, not to take action. But I did that, and it was absolutely amazing because, now that I had sold 10 seats, I had given myself, I think, a week and a half or 2 weeks to create it. Now, all of a sudden, now I had urgency, right? If I didn't sell those beforehand, who knows? It might have taken 3 months to complete the entire program. Mm-hmm. I might have procrastinated, and so, and get this. I mean, people rave about my program. I put everything into it, mm-hmm. right? But I did so in an urgent fashion. I pushed myself to do so. And so, it wasn't rushed or anything, but there was just urgency on it.
Yeah.
And then, it was a fantastic, phenomenal program. And like I said, if I had waited to take action, who knows how long it would have taken to do that.
You might not have done it. Sometimes I see people ask me, they message me about, hey, I want to do this online, or I want to come out with an album, or I want to start a paid mentor group. You do all this content. What should I do? And I say that you got to just do it. Matt and I have been talking about a Reap the Harvest real estate group, and we're just going to build the group. We're going to limit it to X amount of people, and then we're going to stream weekly, and that's how we're going to build the content. Exactly what you said. But it's taken us a couple weeks
bro,
to make the freaking group.
Yeah, bro, I'm telling you, man. Like, and so, a couple of things that you can learn from that story. One, like mentors, whatever type of accountability that you can get, even if you don't have the capital or the money to pay a mentor, get a freaking accountability partner and like get somebody that's going to freaking elevate you and push you. Right? And because just like my mentor did, and so get a mentor. Two, do not wait. Honestly, it's the people that don't wait. It's the people that are taking the action that are honestly the most successful people, right? Mm-hmm. The more action that you take, like fear is crushed by action, right? Like the more action that you take, it's like a snowball effect, and you're just like, especially if you can combine it with like spiritual practices, like I said earlier, like receiving downloads and direction from God, from the divine, from source, whatever, your beliefs are. When you can couple it with that, you're just like in motion all the time. Yeah. And it's not the tired, forceful kind of motion or action.
It turns into a flow.
Exactly. You can get into
momentum.
Flow. You can get into momentum and flow.
Yeah.
You just start taking action, like massive action. You just make that the goal. Like, fuck the result. Like, this is something that I'll tell you. Fuck the result. Make the action the goal. Yeah. And I tell my students that too. Like, are you living in a results-based mindset, or are you living in an action-based mindset?
Well, yeah, because how are you going to get the results without the action anyway?
But not only that, right? When you tie yourself to the results and you don't get it, what happens?
You're broken.
Right. You're broken, or you're disappointed.
You want to quit.
You have expectations, right? Whereas if you just become an action-based mindset person and you relieve everything else, that's a spiritual concept, but like, you relieve everything else. You just take the action. You do what you're supposed to do, and then you release the outcome. You release the outcome. You release yourself from the fruit of your labor. Right? It's a very difficult thing to do if it's deep in you. But that's what I would recommend is make action your goal. Like if you're not taking action, it's because you have a results-based mindset. But if the action is the goal, then it'll shift your paradigm. So
good. So
dude,
good.
That's straight up fire.
That's fire. Have you ever done? And this is something I want to do. There's actually a book on it. But have you done any reading on getting into the flow state? Is that something you have done as far as in your meditation, getting into flow state? I've heard flow state, and just I know we talked about it kind of in a different element of flow, but flow state. They said surfers get it all the time too. When you hit a wave, you instantaneously go into a flow state. But I've heard people literally having chronic illnesses go away because they started surfing, were able to hit a flow state, and it basically took away Crohn's disease and other type of diseases. No one quote me on this, but I have heard this from other people, a different podcast, that you can hit that element, and that's kind of what you're talking about, that momentum builder, that flow that you can get into. But it's all based on action. It's not based on the result.
Dude, you know what flow state is, though?
Tell me.
Flow state is just total presence.
Total presence.
That's all flow state is.
Yeah.
The problem is we have stacked so much bullshit on top of just basic being that we have no idea how to be present anymore. So when you're just so focused, your consciousness flows directly to one thing. Like I've been in flow state in soccer games. I've been in flow state on stage. I'm in flow state right now, right? And when you're able to remove all of those layers of BS that shouldn't even be on your being, then all of a sudden now you can access what should be normal state.
Yeah.
It's actually normal. The flow state is actually normal. So the body is actually at, and that makes sense why you're saying that people have healed themselves, because the body, by its own nature, at rest, heals itself.
Mm-hmm.
Right? But the problem is we've had so many, we stack so many things on top. Our mind can literally make us sick, right? Our stresses can make us sick. You know, it all comes from your perception of the event that's occurring. And so, there's a lot of these things that can happen. So, that's what it is. It's just total presence, right? And when you're present, you're healing. When you're present, you're in action. Like you're literally just so engulfed in the moment that it's so joyful. When you're present, you're totally joyful, and it's just an amazing feeling. And it's sad that it's barely accessed, but I think that as humanity evolves, and as we progress through those levels of consciousness that I was talking about, that I've been reading in that book, we'll be able to access higher and higher states, collectively.
I love it, dude.
That's my freaking main mission and goal. I don't even care about money anymore, dude. Actually, you know what? Let me back up. I'm not gonna say I don't care about money, but that's not the motive. And to be perfectly honest, it used to be, even when I was coaching, that used to be my main motive. Yeah. And I realized, like, even though the program was amazing, even though I had a lot of great feedback, I still wasn't giving to the world. I still wasn't giving to my clients the best me that I possibly could have.
Right. You still had a lot to reveal.
Right. Exactly. And so, we as humans, we have so much fucking potential. It's insane. We're limitless. But we're just using like this small little percentage of our capabilities and our potential, because we're operating from these lower states of consciousness, right? And we're thinking on survival. We're not thinking on on a higher level. And so, anyhow, I'm blabbering.
I like it, dude.
Joe,
I like it a lot.
Thank you so much. I do want to point something out. We talked very little about real estate, and I want to make that very evident, because it is very small. And Joe, you are like an amazing soul, dude. I appreciate you coming on the show. Last thing, where can people follow you? Where can people connect with you? And then Elevate Coaching. Give them the website. Give them everything that people can contact you.
Yeah, man. So Instagram, Joe Dillon Official. Okay. Facebook, you can just hit me up on Joe Dillon. Are we live on Facebook right now?
Yeah, we're live streaming on Facebook right now.
Okay, perfect. All right, so then you could just tag me in this post. So
absolutely.
And then those are pretty much the two main ones, and you can just feel free to just hit me up, message me directly. I'm totally open to talk about any of this stuff. And by the way, if you want to talk anything about real estate, I realized that we didn't. It's so funny. Most of my podcasts lately, like, obviously a lot of people know me in the real estate industry, and every time I'm invited on a podcast, we actually end up talking very little about real estate. But that just goes to show how needed it is, right? Because I'll go with the flow, right? I'll go with the flow. If I need to, I'll talk entirely about real estate.
Well, and it's like you said too, if this isn't correct and aligned, then how are you going to get to, these results that we want in life anyway? If you're not working here, and if the family life is a train wreck and you can't figure out anything in the background of your business, then anything that is visible, or like you say, people chasing external expectations or applause, those are the people that fall apart eventually.
100%, dude. 100,000%.
You know what I mean? I've seen recently there was a gal who, and I've said this a few times, the perfect marriage counselor chick who had millions of followers, and she's getting a divorce now. Why? Because I think she was acting too perfect on the shows all the time, instead of actually touching on the vulnerability, instead of actually admitting, hey, we've got this going bad and this going bad, and this has been really hard for us, but we're going to work about it. And instead of just smoothing over the burnt toast, they tried to act like it was perfect, and I think that was a huge backfire.
Man, I honestly think that the leader of the future is the leader that's going to be able to be totally open and vulnerable. Because we as a society, we're so tired of the fakeness. Like we've been in the social media era long enough that we're just fed up with it.
Yep.
To be honest. And so people are going to gravitate towards authentic leaders. And so that's the leader of the future is the leader that's going to be authentic and vulnerable.
I love that, man. That's great stuff right there.
Yeah. By the way, Matt, did you want to talk about anything real estate specific?
No, dude.
Okay.
This is how we navigate, dude. This is how my mind works. This is why I wanted to bring you on, dude. I appreciated your level of vulnerability. I'm not even gonna lie, dude. Pat got creeped out by our last episode because you want to check it out, but he got so creeped out. But I'm like, dude, this is the reality that a lot of men live in. And I wanted to talk about pornography, dude. I wanted to talk about pornography because I was like, the way it portrays women in general, because I mean, he differentiated on the way, pornography as far as softcore, hardcore, and we were talking about that. But I was like,
I guess I just didn't know we were going to talk about that before the show.
Again, but at the end of the day, right? I'm a heterosexual man. Obviously, and I even tell my wife this. I'm like, there's obviously like beautiful women out in the world, right? But at the end of the day, I choose you, and in order to find like true beauty in you, like pornography cannot be a thing for me, right? It will, my eyes will stray, but what's the redirection, right? And we were talking through that on how, like, what's my redirection, right? Because at the end of the day, in my early 20s, running around, I'm doing my thing, right? But now today, with raising up 3 young girls, and in my why being my wife, right? My tangible presence as far as how I can commit myself to her on a daily basis, that like I know at the end of the day, sex sells, right? It's pornography, it's all these things. And how is that going to, what we're talking about, the paradigm that like, where's the shift, right? Where's that shifting point as far as how I can commit myself wholly to her, and how I can go on a 5:30 walk after dinner and be like, man, I'm so grateful for that woman. When I'm freaking what Pat calls a waxing his carrot, freaking and watching pornography. So it's those things, right, that we have to be vulnerable and authentic. That the reality is women. It's women. There's women and money bring power, right? Women and money bring power in this world. What we're told and what we're preconditioned as men to think. But like, how can I be vulnerable to the fact that is like an issue? Like, I have sexual, like I'm a sexual being, right? At the end of the day.
Sure.
But like, how can I wholly and completely commit that to my wife and be 100% in and committed to her, and look past the sexuality piece and really like connect with her soul? And that's why I love talking about these things, right? Because it's the mind, right? We choose to do these things every day. And if we choose to say that, like, okay, that, maybe looking at this is okay. Like, for me, it's not. And it was at one point, and it was tiresome in my brain when I'm freaking, and I know this is small, but when I'm going down Bayshore and I'm checking out some chick that's running, and I'm like, damn, she's hot, man. But then I look at her 2-3 times over, and I'm like, how am I committing to my wife in that example? And it's exhausting, right? How can I 100%? Yeah, hey, that one, she's a good looking woman. I'm not going to deny it, right? But how do I get right back on track? How do I not have to look at that? All right, boom, wow, she's hot, boom, and I'm right back on track. And it doesn't take up any more mental real estate throughout that day. You know what I mean? And it's just one of those things, man, that like I want to be vulnerable to the fact that I am a sexual being. But at the end of the day, how am I going to be committed? How am I thinking of my marriage 30, 40, 50 years? Why the heck? Why are marriages splitting up? It's because they're not acting out of love. And I think that's what this whole, coming back to kind of the, like, your core main, principle in that meditation exercise you were doing. It's like, how are we acting out of love at the end of the day? And for me, for a single guy, I'll let him do him. But for me and my family, I got to purpose it so that there's no shelf life to it, and that I got to commit to my wife, and I got to connect with her soul. And so, I mean, it's just a really cool. We had a kid come on the show, is insane. But dude, it's all here. It's all here. And so, and that being vulnerable, authentic, and raw along the way is, I think, you got to be intentional about that stuff.
Well, I think what Joe said about thinking inward also is very important. I think that we think outward a lot because we want to make sure, hey, you guys like what I'm doing and this and that and all that other stuff, because this is the digital era where hearts and likes and comments are, the wave of the day. But in the end, if you're satisfying yourself and you're moving in the right direction internally and successful internally, that stuff will come anyway.
Exactly.
In some way, shape, or form.
Right. And in some way, shape, or form is a perfect way to say it, because that's not the goal, right?
Right.
And so, but when you're operating from that place, anything that comes out, will be authentic. It will be powerful. It'll be, it'll be in alignment with who you are and what your soul is being called to do. And I think we need more people operating from that place, because right now it's the vast minority. And so that's why, I'm just big on this, and I'm huge on just spreading this message and talking about it.
I love it. Ladies and gentlemen, hit up Joe Dillon Official on Instagram. Follow this man. Thanks for coming on, man. It was phenomenal.
Thank you. I appreciate you, Joe. Thank you so much for coming on. Great conversation, bro.
Absolutely. Yeah, I had a great time. And hit me up anytime. I had fun. Appreciate you guys for having me on.
Appreciate you.
Rock on. Reap the harvest, folks. Have a great weekend.
Happy 4th of July, everybody.
Happy Independence Day.
Be blessed.